Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, May 27th, 2022. Today's Chairman's Report is guest written by Jade Walle. Jade's a partner in a CPA firm and is on the board of Americans for Fair Taxation. Cancel culture and the fair tax. Cancel culture is a cruel and ugly phenomenon that has stormed into American society and entwined itself into the very fabric of our lives. Cancel culture has been defined in various ways, including, as quoted in a May 19, 2021 Pew Research Center analysis, trying to silence someone that does not have the same belief as you. Cancel culture violates affected people's civil rights. Now, another aspect of cancel culture is rewriting history and prohibiting the expression of certain facts because they may be offensive to a racial, religious, ethnic, or economic group, etc. The goal is to make people comfortable at any cost, including the cost of historical accuracy. If bad things happened in the past that made people uncomfortable, well, then any and all reference to those bad things must be erased. The FAIR.org's January 31st, 2022 FAIR survey highlighted that 6 in 10 Americans feel that our nation's democracy is threatened because people are afraid to voice their opinions, according to a new survey from the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. Now, all this leads us to an obvious question. What in the world does cancel culture have to do with the fair tax? Well, in a word, everything. Cancel culture is a war of words. Now, many things in this life often come down to a war of words, be it with our enemies, counterparts, colleagues, friends, spouse, and the largest battlefield of all, in our own minds. For the fair tax and its founding grassroots organization, Americans for Fair Taxation, there have been times when it has received bipartisan co-sponsor support in Congress. Now, this was especially true in the years immediately following the fair tax's late 1990s creation. The two Neil Bort's fair tax books document mass gatherings and a groundswell of support for the fair tax that was effectively squashed by the media. To this day, you will very rarely hear the fair tax even mentioned in any serious, sincere discussion of U.S. tax policy. When AFFT President Steve Hayes was interviewed in 2017 by Stuart Varney of the Fox Business Network, Steve could barely even mention the fair tax without Mr. Varney cutting him off and dismissing the idea as implausible. The fair tax guys talk about this spectacle frequently on their weekly podcast, FAIRtax Power Radio, which I encourage you to listen to each week. There's also been a directive by one political party to prohibit its members from co-sponsoring H.R. 25, the Fair Tax Act, in the House. Party leadership wields a sharp sword as it relates to committee appointments, sponsorship, contributions, and future power within the party. Now, 2 items are worth mentioning as we contend with the reality of the cancel culture. First, cancel culture denies men and women their chance to traverse the arc of humanity. Some of life's most compelling stories are those of change, where someone was the worst of beings and whose 180-degree turnabout is so captivating and enthralling that you have to keep on reading or hearing about it. When people are canceled, they're shut down and denied this normally human opportunity because they've been marked with a scarlet letter and relegated to oblivion. Now think about the incredible comeback stories that will never be told because of this horrible trend. The second point is to try to understand the root of this monstrosity. The FAIR.org article cited earlier notes that nearly 1/4 of people surveyed are fairly often or very often afraid to state certain opinions for fear of losing their jobs or their standings in school, while 18% are similarly afraid to say what they believe for fear of potential consequences. 8% admit they often feel pressure to say things they really don't believe in order to fit in. When we hear these statistics, the root cause is revealed, if only somewhat. The very act of silencing someone is a veiled attempt at imprisonment and, taken to its logical conclusion, murder. Humanity has struggled for eons trying to create a truly free society. Taking away someone's right to speak their ideas, opinions, and even their very thoughts runs 180 degrees counter to all that we've struggled for. Here we are again, railing against the freedom we've known for such an infinitesimally small portion of the entirety of human history. Now, one of the most compelling of all historical figures, Jesus Christ, was a victim of the cancel culture of his day. Now, ultimately, he was not beaten, murdered, and crucified for his actions, which included feeding thousands on a hill, healing the blind, crippled, mentally unstable, and possessed, and even bringing a dead man back to life. Nope, he was murdered because of his words. He dared to express thoughts, ideas, and concepts that ran counter to the religious establishment's status quo, and it cost him his life. Now, make no mistake about it. Those who oppose the fair tax want us silenced. We are a threat to the status quo that is cronyism, a sordid and ugly lobbying cartel, and the existing power structure in Washington, D.C. However, think about all the good things that the fair tax will bring to this incredible place that we call home. Naming only a few. The fair tax will end the countless amendments to the IRS tax code that we are all responsible to know, understand, and apply. It will end the filing of all IRS tax returns, individual, corporate, gift, estate, etc. It will also end the regressive payroll tax that hurts our working poor and hits them the hardest. The fair tax ends our government having a right to our most intimate personal and financial data. It will end the embedded taxes that are built into the cost of everything we buy, and it will also end the $1 trillion a year worth of illegal tax evasion. Now, tax evasion is estimated to be reduced by 95% with the fair tax. We can't afford to let ourselves be silenced and canceled. The current income payroll tax system is corrupt, unfair, horribly inefficient, and hopelessly complex. Real tax reform, the fair tax, is urgently needed. Let us work hard to keep bringing the fair tax message to everyone who will listen. Perhaps the only way to avoid being permanently canceled and relegated to oblivion is to generate such a groundswell of support that it becomes a tidal wave that the status quo just can't cancel. In conclusion, as Jade explains, there is an increasing trend by many to simply dismiss arguments and positions with which they disagree, not by dealing with the merits of the case, but by attacking the character, intelligence, and motives of the people making those arguments. When this happens, you can be sure of two things. They can't defeat you with logic, reason, facts, and common sense, and they are very afraid of you and your opinion. Like bullies everywhere, people who attack and not reason need to be confronted. Because they are almost always cowards, they will scurry like cockroaches when you turn on the lights. So what can each of us do? We can write letters and make calls to our elected representatives demanding that if the government really wants to eliminate the burden of filing income tax returns, they should enact the fair tax and do away with tax returns altogether. The great 18th century Irish statesman Edmund Burke made a statement that applies in many ways. Nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. Take back control. Help us pass the fair tax. The IRS will be gone and we'll pay our taxes when we make purchases. We, not the ruling class and their minions in D.C., will decide how much federal tax we pay. If you have friends who don't know about the fair tax, send them to fairtax.org. Have them watch the whiteboards under How It Works, and if they agree, ask them to please join us. Then, contact your members of Congress and the President and demand that Congress pass the fair tax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.